The words hit me like a car crash. They are not your children. They never were. For a moment I could not breathe. I stood in the middle of our living room, surrounded by 15 years of family photos, school drawings, birthday cards, each one now feeling like a lie. My legs gave out before the tears could. I sank onto the edge of the couch, staring at the man I had built my entire life around. The man I had trusted, loved, fought for, and forgiven more times than I could count. He stood with his arms crossed, not angry, not emotional. I did not think you needed to know, he said flatly, as if that made it better. As if that erased the years I had spent being their mother. I remember hearing my own heartbeat in my ears, louder than his voice. The walls felt like they were caving in. My hands were shaking. I could not even form words. All I could do was sit there, mouth open, as everything I thought I knew came undone in a matter of seconds. I was 24 when I met Daniel. I had just moved into my first real apartment, a tiny one-bedroom on the edge of town. Rent was cheap, the place was modest, and the walls were so thin I could hear the neighbor's cat coughing up hairballs, but it was mine. I was working 2 jobs back then. One at a bakery in the mornings, the other as a waitress in the evenings. It was not glamorous, but I was proud of myself. I had survived a messy childhood, aged out of foster care at 18, and had no safety net. Every dollar I earned was hard-won. Daniel came into the bakery one rainy morning just as I was closing up. He smiled in that way some men do, not cocky but confident. He asked if I had any blueberry muffins left. I offered him the last one for free, and he insisted on paying double. Said he admired my work ethic. We talked for 10 minutes that felt like an hour, and when he left, he promised to come back. And he did. Every morning that week. He was older than me by 6 years, already working as a mechanic with a steady job and a rental house with a backyard. I was used to people who made promises they did not keep, so at first, I kept him at arm's length. But he wore me down in the most gentle way. Flowers on my break, fixing my squeaky bike for free, asking questions and actually listening to the answers. For the first time in my life I felt like someone saw me. Not just the version of me that hustled to survive, but the real me. By the time we started dating officially, I had let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was what safety felt like. Daniel was stable, funny, dependable. He talked about the future as if I was a part of it. He told me he wanted a big family. Sunday BBQs. Kids with my eyes in his hair. A house that smelled like fresh bread and laughter. He wanted what I had always dreamed of, only I never really believed I could have it. We moved in together a year later. His house was nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, old carpet, a backyard full of weeds. But we turned it into a home. I painted the walls warm colors. He built a bench for the front porch. We spent evenings making dinner and watching old movies, tangled up on the couch. A few months after moving in, he brought up the kids. Not his, but his nieces and nephews, or so he said. He told me they had been through a rough time. Their parents were not doing well. Drugs, neglect, unstable homes. He had stepped in to help. One of the girls, Mia, was 4. Her brother, Jaden, was 6. Their baby brother, Liam, was still in diapers. Daniel said it was temporary, just until things settled down. He asked if I would be okay with them staying with us. I said yes without hesitation. I saw it as a way to prove myself, to show him I was ready for the family we talked about. And those kids, they stole my heart from the first night. Mia curled up in my lap like she had always been there. Jaden followed me around asking questions about everything. Liam, chubby and curious, started calling me Mama within weeks. I did not correct him. Felt right. 1 month turned into 6. 6 turned into a year. No word from their parents. No updates. Daniel never gave me much detail, but I did not push. I trusted him. I believed in the story he had told me. That we were doing the right thing. That we were saving these kids from a bad situation. Over time, our home became their home. I enrolled them in school. I learned how to braid Mia's hair, pack lunches Jaden would actually eat, soothe Liam's cries at night. When Jaden broke his arm falling off the monkey bars, it was me in the ER, holding his hand. When Mia had night terrors, it was me who stayed up, singing lullabies. Daniel was there too, but often working late or busy in the garage. The parenting fell on me and I did it gladly. We never had paperwork. No legal adoption, no official guardianship. Daniel said it was complicated. I did not ask questions. Maybe I should have. But I was so caught up in being their mother, in building something real, that I ignored the cracks. I thought love would be enough. Years passed. We became a unit. Family pictures on the wall. Christmas mornings filled with wrapping paper and cocoa. Parent-teacher meetings. Trips to the zoo. I knew every scrape on their knees, every food allergy, every favorite bedtime story. I never called them foster kids. They were mine. In every way that mattered. We talked about having a baby of our own, but money was tight and time slipped away. Deep down, I felt like I already had what I wanted. 3 beautiful, messy, loud little humans who called me mom. So when Daniel changed jobs and started coming home late, I thought it was just stress. When he got secretive with his phone, I chalked it up to burnout. When he became distant, I blamed myself. Maybe I had become boring, too wrapped up in the kids. I never imagined the truth would be so much worse. I had built a life on trust, and love, on the idea that if I gave enough of myself, I would finally have a family that stayed. But that day in the living room, when he looked me in the eye and told me they were not mine, that they had never been mine, something inside me broke. Not because of the lie, but because of what it stole from me. I had been a mother for 15 years. And in one moment he took it all away. The early days of raising the children felt like jumping into the deep end without knowing how to swim. I had no guidebook, no mother of my own to call, no real preparation, just love and instinct, and a determination to give them something I had never known, stability. At first, every day felt like chaos wrapped in hugs. There were tantrums and diaper blowouts, late-night feedings and mysterious fevers. Liam would wake up crying 3 or 4 times a night, needing to be held, rocked, whispered to until his tiny body relaxed against mine. Mia clung to me so tightly that I could barely go to the bathroom without her following. Jaden, being the oldest, kept everything bottled up. He would act out sometimes, breaking a toy, yelling at Mia, shutting down when asked to talk, but I saw through it. I saw the fear, the confusion, the ache for something he could not name. I did what I knew how to do. I showed up, every single day. I read books on parenting during my lunch breaks. I called the pediatrician more times than I can count. I learned how to braid Mia's hair even though my fingers fumbled at first. I labeled all their school clothes. I memorized their schedules. I held them when they cried, danced with them when they laughed, and tried my best to make every small moment count. Money was tight, but I made it work. I picked up extra shifts at the diner when Daniel could stay home. I sold handmade scarves online for a little side income. I skipped buying new clothes for myself for years. My shoes wore thin. My jeans faded. But the kids always had warm coats, backpacks, and birthday cakes. Daniel helped in the beginning. He played with the kids in the yard on weekends. He built them a treehouse with a crooked ladder and a pirate flag. He taught Jaden how to fix a flat tire and showed Mia how to cast a fishing line. But slowly, bit by bit, more of the parenting landed on me. He said work was demanding. He said he was tired. I understood, or at least I thought I did. I did not resent it. I was used to carrying weight. What mattered was that the children were loved. I remember the first time Jaden called me Mom. He was 8, and we had just finished decorating the Christmas tree. He stood there in his pajamas, holding the ornament he had made in school, and he looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Mom, can we have cocoa now?" It was so casual, so natural, and I remember feeling something bloom inside me. I blinked fast to hide the tears. I had never thought I would hear that word, not from him. But it fit. It was real. Mia followed soon after. Although with her it came like a declaration. She had a nightmare one night and came running into my room. I pulled her into bed and she whispered, "I love you, Mommy." She fell asleep with her little hand on my chest, and I lay awake for hours just watching her breathe. Liam had called me Mama from almost the beginning, but over time it changed. Became more secure, more full. I was the one he called for when he fell off his scooter, the one he brought drawings to, the one he clung to at every parent-teacher meeting. I was not just filling in. I was becoming their anchor. There were hard days, of course. Days when Liam came home with a fever and threw up on the carpet. Days when Mia got lice and I spent a whole weekend combing through her hair, crying in frustration. Days when Jaden got into trouble at school for talking back or fighting, and I had to sit down and figure out what was really going on in that guarded little heart of his. But those struggles, they shaped us. They bonded us. I began to understand that motherhood was not just about the big moments, but the hundreds of small, invisible choices made every day. Waking up early to make sure their lunches were packed. Saying no when it would have been easier to say yes. Reading the same book 100 times just because it made them smile. I sacrificed without question. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I stopped going out with friends. I missed weddings, birthdays, job opportunities. I turned down a promotion once because the new hours would have kept me away too much. I clipped coupons like it was a second job. I learned to stretch spaghetti into 3 meals and made grilled cheese out of whatever we had left in the fridge. I knew how many days we could go before payday if we skipped meat. I became a magician in the kitchen. There was joy in those years too. So much joy. Watching Liam take his first steps. Hearing Mia sing at her first school recital, all off-key and radiant. Seeing Jaden score his first soccer goal and run straight to me in the stands. Christmas mornings when they tore into gifts with shrieks and laughter. Summer afternoons spent chasing fireflies. Pancake Sundays with flour in our hair and syrup on the walls. I kept every drawing they made. Every macaroni necklace. Every "I love you" note scribbled in crayon. I hung them on the fridge like priceless art. Our home was filled with noise and mess and love. I would walk through the hallway and see shoes kicked off in every direction, socks missing their match, backpacks slouched in corners, and I felt proud. This was the life I had always wanted. My relationship with Daniel became more like a partnership in name than in spirit. He was there physically but distant. Still I held on. For the kids. For the family. I thought maybe if I just tried harder, gave more, it would come back. The warmth, the connection. He had given me this life after all. Or so I thought. Sometimes I would lie in bed at night and look at the ceiling, exhausted to the bone but full in a way I had never been before. I would think about the little girl I used to be, the one who moved through foster homes, never staying long enough to unpack. I would wish I could tell her. We made it. We have a family now. We are safe. I did not need blood. I did not need paperwork. These children were mine. They came to me in a way I could not have planned, but they filled every part of me that had once been hollow. They taught me how to be soft, how to be strong, how to keep going even when my heart was tired. Every time someone asked, "Are these your kids?" I would smile and say yes, because they were. They are. In every memory, in every heartbeat. For 15 years I poured myself into them, and I would have done it all over again. Every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every sacrifice. Because loving them was never a duty. It was the most natural thing I have ever done. I did not know then that it was all being built on a lie. I did not know that the man I trusted had given me a story instead of the truth. All I knew was that I was a mother. And every single day I lived like one. It did not happen all at once. There was no sudden shift, no sharp turn where I could say, this is where things changed. Instead, it was gradual. Like a slow leak in the ceiling that you do not notice until the stain has already spread. One day, everything seems fine, and the next, you are standing under water damage, wondering how long it had been forming. That was how it was with Daniel. First, the changes were small. He stopped coming home for dinner. Said he had to work late. First, I believed him. He was the provider, the one with a steady paycheck. He had always taken pride in his work, so I did not question it. I wrapped leftovers for him, left the porch light on, and told the kids Daddy would be home soon. Sometimes he was not. Then there was his phone. He had never been secretive about it before. We shared everything, passwords, calendars, the grocery list app. But then one day he changed his phone lock screen. No explanation, just a shrug when I asked. He started taking calls outside, stepping onto the porch and lowering his voice. If I walked into the room while he was texting, he would turn the screen away or put the phone down. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that I was being paranoid. I remember one night I asked him if everything was okay. We were doing dishes, the kids were asleep, and I just looked at him and said, "You have been different lately." He dried his hands slowly and said, "I am just tired." No explanation, no warmth, just those 3 words and a wall I could not see over. After that I started noticing other things. There were receipts in his pockets for places I had never heard of. Restaurants out of town, gas stations far beyond his usual route. I found a woman's earring once wedged in the back seat of the car. He said it must have belonged to one of Mia's friends. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. I did not want to rock the boat. Not for me, not for the children. They were happy. They were thriving. Jaden had made the honor roll. Mia had started ballet. Liam was learning to read and would proudly sound out words for anyone who would listen. Our life was full of routines and rituals. Friday night movie nights, pancake Sundays, back-to-school shopping, Halloween costumes. I held all of it together like a quilt, patching and stitching, even as the fabric started to fray. But there were moments, small ones, that stood out. Times when Daniel would snap over nothing. He once yelled at me for asking where he had been. Not because of the question itself, but because I had dared to ask it. His words were sharp, designed to shut me down. "You do not trust me. After everything I have done." I apologized. I always did. He started keeping papers locked in a drawer in the garage. I saw him out there one night with a stack of envelopes, organizing them by flashlight. When I asked what he was doing, he said it was none of my business. I laughed nervously, trying to make light of it, but he did not laugh back. Even the kids started noticing. Mia asked me once why Daddy did not sit at the table with us anymore. I told her he was working hard. Jaden stayed quiet more often, burying himself in video games and headphones. Liam asked if Daddy was mad. I told him no. I lied. Looking back, I see how isolated I had become. I did not have close friends anymore. Life had become a cycle of chores and childcare, meals and school runs. My world was the house and the children and Daniel. I had let everything else fall away. My best friend from high school had stopped calling. My sister, the only family I had kept in touch with, lived 3 states away and had her own life. I did not want to bother her. I did not want to admit that something felt wrong. Sometimes I would go out to the backyard after the kids were asleep and sit on the porch steps with a cup of tea, listening to the night. That was when the doubt would creep in. I would wonder if I had made a mistake. If I had trusted too quickly. If love alone had been enough to build a family. I would replay conversations in my head, trying to find the moment I stopped recognizing the man I had once fallen in love with. There was one afternoon I will never forget. Daniel came home early, which had become rare. I was in the middle of folding laundry, and the kids were playing outside. He walked into the room and looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. I smiled and asked how his day was. He said, "Why are you always in here doing the same thing? Do you ever stop and think about your life?" I stood there with a shirt in my hands, stunned. I did not know what to say. That moment stuck with me like a splinter I could never quite pull out. It was not just the secrecy or the anger. It was the way he stopped being present. His body was there, but his mind, his heart, they were somewhere else. I tried to fill the gap. I planned family outings. I made his favorite meals. I bought him a new jacket for his birthday, even though it meant I went without a winter coat of my own. But nothing seemed to reach him. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted the life we had built. If he felt trapped. I began to blame myself. Maybe I had not been enough. Maybe I had become boring. Maybe I had changed too much. The self-doubt was a slow poison, eating away at my confidence. And yet, despite it all, I kept showing up. I kept being the mother. I kept holding the house together. Because the children were watching. They needed consistency. They needed love. And I still believed, deep down, that this was just a rough patch. That couples go through phases. That if I held on long enough, we would find our way back. But there were nights when he would come home smelling like cologne I did not wear. There were long weekends when he said he had to go on work trips with no details, no itinerary. He started getting phone calls late at night and stepping outside to take them. I asked once who it was. He looked at me and said, "Do you really want to know?" I remember that question more than I remember the answer because the way he asked it made it clear that whatever the truth was, it would break me. I began to carry a quiet ache everywhere I went. I smiled for the children, packed lunches, braided hair, kissed bruises, sat in the audience for school plays. But inside I was unraveling. I no longer felt like a wife. I felt like a placeholder, like someone standing in for a life he no longer wanted. Still I stayed, not because I was weak, but because I loved those children more than I loved my own pride. They were my world, my reason, my heartbeat. I told myself that I could survive anything as long as they were safe, as long as they were happy. But something was off. I could feel it in my bones. And even though I did not have the full picture yet, I knew, in that deep, quiet place where truth lives, that whatever Daniel was hiding would change everything. I just did not know how much it would cost me. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. Nothing dramatic. The kind of day you forget unless something unforgettable happens. The children had gone off to school, and I had taken the day off work to catch up on errands and clean the house. I remember the sunlight coming through the window, falling across the kitchen table like it always did. I remember folding laundry and hearing the quiet hum of the dishwasher. Everything felt ordinary. Daniel came home early. That was strange in itself. He walked in like a man dragging a weight behind him. His shoulders were tight, his face pale. He would not look me in the eye. I asked him if something had happened at work. He did not answer. Instead he asked if we could talk. I dried my hands on a towel and sat down across from him. The silence between us felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then opened it again. He said, "There is something I have to tell you." My heart started racing. I did not know why, but I knew. Not the details, but the feeling that my world was about to shift. He took a breath, then another. And then the words came, low and fast, like he wanted to get them out before he lost the nerve. "The children. They are not legally yours. They never were." I stared at him, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "Of course they are mine." He shook his head. "You never adopted them. Their mother is still alive. She left. She did not want them. And I did not tell you because I knew it would scare you away." My mind was not making the connections. I felt like I had left my body and was watching someone else live this moment. I said, "What do you mean I never adopted them? You told me their mother had passed away, that they needed a mother, that I was their only family." He looked down at the table. "I lied. She is alive. She left when Liam was a baby. She signed custody over to me, but it was never a formal adoption. I just let you believe it was." I could not breathe. My mouth was dry. My hands were shaking. I felt cold and hot at the same time. "So you let me believe that they were mine? For 15 years. He nodded. "Yes, I needed you. I needed help. And you loved them. You still love them. That part is real. That part is real." I stood up. I walked to the window because I did not know what else to do. The trees outside were swaying gently. The world had not stopped turning, even though mine had. I turned back to him and said, "You made me believe I was their mother. You let me wake up every day and pour myself into them. And all this time you knew I had no legal right to them." He started talking, trying to explain. Something about desperation, about fear, about not wanting to lose me. He said he thought I would leave if I knew the truth, that I would not have stayed if I knew there was a chance their mother could come back, that he loved me and did not know how to tell me once the lie started. His voice sounded far away. I was not hearing his words anymore. I was seeing moments, memories, replaying them like broken film. Jaden's 8th birthday when he hugged me and whispered, "Thanks for always being here." Mia's dance recital when she ran into my arms and said, "Did I do good, Mommy?" Liam's first day of kindergarten, when he cried and would not let go of my hand. I had mothered them. I had loved them with every fiber of who I was. And now I was being told that none of it was mine. That the very foundation of my motherhood had been built on a lie. I felt anger rise up like fire. "Do you understand what you have done to me? To them?" Shouted. "You used me. You took my heart and built your life on it. And now you are telling me it was never real." He stood too, his face twisted in guilt and fear. "It was real. You made it real. They love you. You are their mother in every way that matters. But not in the way that counts in a courtroom," I said. "Not on paper. Not in the eyes of the law. And you knew that. You knew it and you said nothing." I left the house. I do not even remember grabbing my coat. I just needed air. I needed space. I walked for blocks without knowing where I was going. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench, watching a mother push her baby on a swing. I watched the child laugh, arms reaching for the sky, and I felt something crack wide open in me. I had given everything. Every dream, every plan, every part of my identity had been shaped by the role I thought was mine. Mother, caregiver, protector. And in one sentence, he had taken it all away. I thought about every scraped knee, every homework project, every bedtime story. I thought about the nights I stayed up worrying about fevers. The times I showed up at parent-teacher meetings, proudly holding their hands. The birthdays I planned down to every detail. The Christmas mornings I wrapped in magic. None of it had been mine, not really. I had done it all as a guest in someone else's story. Felt like a fool, like a stranger in my own life. I kept seeing the children's faces, hearing their voices, and then I saw the gaps, the moments that had not made sense at the time. The times Daniel had interrupted me when I tried to talk about legal guardianship. The way he always rushed past questions about their birth certificates. The odd looks I had gotten from his relatives, as if they were biting their tongues. It all made sense now. The secrecy, distance, the guilt. He had been carrying this lie the entire time. And I had been walking blind, trusting him completely. The next few days were a blur. Could not sleep. Could not eat. I kept going through boxes of memories, drawings, photos, cards they had made for me. To the best mom. I love you, Mommy. Thanks for being there. I clutched them like proof that I had not imagined it, that it had been real. Daniel tried to talk to me, but I could not hear him. Every time I looked at him, I saw betrayal. I saw manipulation. I saw a man who had chosen control over honesty, who had decided for me what I could handle, who had taken my choice away. I cried in the shower so the children would not hear me. I smiled through dinner, even as my heart was crumbling. I hugged them tighter, kissed them longer, held their hands a little more carefully, because I did not know what was going to happen next. I had no legal rights, no documents, no adoption papers. And now I knew that their birth mother was still out there, somewhere. What if she came back? What if Daniel decided to take the children and walk away, and I would have no way to stop him? I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground beneath me was cracking. I had spent 15 years building a life, a home, a love that I thought was mine. And now I was being told it could all be taken away with a signature. And yet, through all the pain, one truth remained. I loved them. That had not changed. That would never change. No lie could erase the years I had spent as their mother. No document could undo the bond we had built. But now I was faced with a truth I had never prepared for. I had to fight for what I had always believed was mine. I had to find a way to become, legally, what I had always been in my heart. Because if I did not, I could lose everything. And I had already lost too much. The morning after his confession, the world felt unfamiliar. The walls of our home, once warm and safe, now felt like they were watching me, whispering reminders of all the years I had given. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost, making breakfast for the children, packing their lunches, brushing Mia's hair. They noticed I was quiet, but none of them asked why. Children have a way of sensing change, even when they do not understand it. I looked at their faces, so full of trust, and I wondered how much of that trust was about to break. I wondered how I could ever look at them the same again, knowing what I knew. Not because I loved them any less, but because I had been forced to question the very foundation of our bond. I had mothered them every day for over a decade. But legally, officially, I was a stranger. And that thought hollowed me out from the inside. When they left for school, I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the empty driveway. Then I closed the door and sat at the table where Daniel had shattered my world the day before. The silence was unbearable. I needed answers. I needed to understand what he had done, how it had all happened, and what it meant now. So I called him. He answered on the first ring. "We need to talk," I said. He came home early again that day. I was waiting for him, my hands folded tightly in my lap, my eyes red from the tears I could not stop. He looked tired, like he had aged overnight. There was no anger in my voice when I spoke, only a quiet devastation. "I want everything, the whole truth, not just what you think I can handle." He sat across from me and nodded slowly. "I will tell you everything." He started from the beginning. He had married young. His first wife, Vanessa, had left him when the youngest child, Liam, was just a few months old. She had struggled with addiction. She had disappeared for months at a time, eventually signing over custody to him, though no formal adoption had ever taken place. He had told everyone, including me, that she was dead. He thought it was easier, cleaner. "You came into our lives at the right time," he said. "You brought structure, stability. You gave them love. I watched them fall in love with you, and I thought, what is the point of telling the truth if the truth might break that? But it was not your choice to make," I said. My voice trembled. "You made a decision that changed my entire life. You let me believe they were mine. You let me build a life with them, with you, all on a lie." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But it was not because I wanted to hurt you. I needed you. They needed you. You used me," I said. "You used my love. You used my heart. You took my trust and you crushed it." We sat in silence after that, the weight of it all pressing down on us like a storm cloud. The next few weeks were chaos. I spoke to a lawyer. I needed to know where I stood. The answer was worse than I expected. Without a formal adoption, I had no legal parental rights. I had raised them, yes. I had cared for them, yes. But in the eyes of the law, I was not their mother. "If he wants to take them and walk away, he can," the lawyer told me. "Unless you pursue legal action, and even then, it is an uphill battle." Felt sick. Could not sleep. I started keeping the children's birth certificates hidden in my bedroom drawer. I was paranoid, afraid he would disappear with them. Every time he left the house, I watched through the window, holding my breath until he came back. I told my sister. She was furious. "He lied to you for 15 years. That is not a mistake, that is manipulation," she said. "You need to fight. You need to protect yourself." Friends who had always admired our family were now hesitant, unsure what to say. Some offered support. Others drifted away, uncomfortable with the messiness of it all. I did not blame them. This was not the picture-perfect family I had shown the world. This was broken, complicated, painful. But the worst part was telling the children. I did not want to. I tried to avoid it. But children know. They know when something is wrong. They know when the grown-ups are pretending. One night, Mia came to me and asked, "Why is Daddy sleeping in the guest room? Did you two have a fight?" I pulled her into my lap and held her tightly. "We are figuring things out, sweetheart. But there is something important I need to tell you." I explained it as gently as I could. That when I met them, their birth mother had already left. That I had stepped in to love them, raise them, and that I had always believed I was their mother in every way. I told her the truth that I had learned, that there were legal things I had not known about, that her father had made choices I did not agree with, but none of it changed how much I loved her. She cried, quietly, into my shoulder. "So you are not my real mom?" she asked. "I am your real mom," I said. "Maybe not by blood, maybe not by law. But I am real. Every day, every night, every moment. I have been your mom." Jaden was angry. He yelled at Daniel. He punched the wall. "You lied to all of us," he said. "She is our mom. I do not care what paper says." Liam was confused. Too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel the tension. He clung to me for days, as if afraid I would vanish. Their reactions broke my heart. But they also gave me strength. They saw me. They chose me. And that meant something. I started digging. I wanted to see the papers for myself. The custody agreement. The birth records. I needed to understand what had been hidden from me. I asked Daniel for everything. He gave me a box filled with documents. Some were old and yellowing, others were more recent. There was a copy of Vanessa's signature relinquishing custody to Daniel, but no formal court record of an adoption. I looked her up. Vanessa, their birth mother. Found an address. Phone number. I did not know if I would ever contact her. But just knowing she was out there, alive, was enough to keep me awake at night. I asked Daniel if she had ever tried to reach out. He shook his head. Not once. She wanted a clean break. But that was not good enough for me. I needed to know. I needed to be ready in case she came back. I also asked for paternity tests. I needed facts. I needed to anchor myself in something solid. He agreed. The results came back a few weeks later. All 3 children were biologically his. I stared at the documents, a wave of grief and relief crashing over me at the same time. They were his. That part was real. And now I had to fight to make the rest of it real too. I sat Daniel down again. This time I was calm. Clear. "I want custody," I said. "Legal custody. I want my name on the papers. I want to be their mother in every way that matters. Not just emotionally. I want protection. For me. For them." He looked tired. Defeated. "You are their mother. I never meant to take that from you." "Then help me," I said. "Make it right." That was the start of a long, grueling legal process. Paperwork. Hearings. Evaluations. The court wanted to know why we had never formalized the adoption. They wanted to speak to the children. To assess the home. To review every detail of our lives. It was humiliating and heartbreaking. Having to prove that I was a mother to the children I had raised. But I did it. 'Cause I had to. Because I would never walk away from them. Because love, even when built on broken ground, deserved to be recognized. Through it all, Daniel and I barely spoke unless it was about the children. We had been through too much. The trust was gone. And though part of me still wanted to believe we could come back from this, another part knew that something fundamental had been shattered. I had faced the truth. I had confronted the man I once loved. I had looked my life in the eye and said, "You will not break me." Now, all that remained was the fight to reclaim what had always been mine in my heart. And I would fight. With everything I had. Because motherhood is not defined by paperwork. It is defined by love, sacrifice, and unwavering presence. And in that, I had never wavered. In the months that followed, I found myself waking up in a different kind of silence. It was no longer the deafening void that had followed his confession, but a quieter, more reflective space. I began to realize that healing was not a single moment or a final destination. It was a slow, imperfect journey of rediscovering who I was, piece by piece, without the roles and labels I had once clung to for my sense of self. I started going to therapy. First, I could barely speak. I would sit there, tears quietly falling, struggling to articulate the heaviness in my chest. My therapist was kind, patient. She never pushed, only offered space and time for the words to come. Eventually, they did. I talked about the betrayal, the years I had invested, the identity I had built around being a mother. I talked about the fear that I was nothing without them. That without the daily tasks, the hugs, the bedtime stories, I was just empty. But she helped me see something different. She reminded me that I had not simply been a role. I had been a presence, a force of love and stability in those children's lives. And even if the law had taken time to catch up, even if my heart had been bruised beyond recognition, I was not invisible. I was not lost. I leaned on my sister more than I ever had before. She became my anchor, calling me every day, bringing over meals when I forgot to eat, encouraging me to leave the house even when all I wanted to do was sit in the dark. Some days I resisted, and she let me. But other days she pulled me out of the pit and reminded me that I was still alive. I also found unexpected support from a local group for women navigating non-traditional motherhood. There were stepmothers, foster mothers, women who had raised nieces and nephews, grandmothers raising grandchildren. Their stories mirrored pieces of my own, and for the first time in a long time I did not feel so alone. They understood the strange ache of loving children that the world did not always recognize as yours. They understood the complicated grief, the confusing boundaries, the fight to be seen. With their support I began to focus on myself. I started journaling again. Writing had always been something I loved, but over the years it had been lost in the chaos of school runs and laundry and late-night fevers. Putting my thoughts on paper was cathartic. It helped me see patterns in my pain, and it reminded me of the strength I had built through every sleepless night and every hard choice. I also returned to teaching part-time. It was something I had let go of to care for the children full-time, but stepping back into a classroom brought me a sense of purpose that was not tied to my heartbreak. I saw young faces light up with understanding, watched tiny hands grasp big ideas, and it reminded me that nurturing was still part of me, that I could give and guide and shape lives in many ways. I reconnected with old friends, some who had drifted away during the hardest parts of my marriage. A few had heard bits of what had happened, and when I finally told them everything, their reactions were full of shock and compassion. One friend cried with me. Another hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. I realized how much I had isolated myself, how much I had hidden behind the illusion of a perfect family. And now, free of that illusion, I began to let people back in. And the children, that was the part of my life that continued to pulse with both joy and pain. After the initial chaos of the legal process, things had settled into a tentative rhythm. I had shared custody, granted by a court that had finally seen the depth of my relationship with them. But it was not the same as before. They spent some nights with Daniel, others with me. The consistency they once had was fractured, and I could see it in their behavior. The questions, the clinging, the outbursts. But we were working through it. I never pretended it was easy. There were times they asked about their birth mother, times they were angry at both Daniel and me, times they pulled away. But there were also moments when they curled up next to me on the couch, moments when they called me Mom without hesitation, moments when they told me they loved me before falling asleep. Mia struggled the most. She was the oldest, and her understanding of the situation carried more weight. She asked hard questions. She challenged me. But she also came to me with her fears, her heartbreaks, her school drama. I cherished those conversations because they reminded me that while everything else had changed, our bond remained. Jaden, ever the protector, became more quiet, more watchful. I knew he blamed Daniel for what had happened, and it affected their relationship. I tried not to get in the middle, but it was difficult not to feel torn. I encouraged him to speak to someone, and eventually, he agreed to try counseling too. Liam, still young, seemed to find comfort in routine. I made sure our home felt safe, warm, familiar. He still asked for bedtime stories, still held my hand in public, still drew pictures with me in them. He was my little mirror of hope. Through it all, Daniel and I co-parented with cautious civility. We were not friends, but we were not enemies. We kept our interactions focused on the children. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of the man I had once loved, the way he looked at Liam when he laughed, or the softness in his voice when he said goodbye to Mia at school. It made everything more complicated. But I had long accepted that healing did not require forgetting. It required boundaries, clarity, and grace. There were moments of clarity that came in unexpected places. A quiet walk through the park on a cool autumn day. A student at school who reminded me of Jaden. A song on the radio that made me cry, then made me smile through the tears. These moments stitched me back together, slowly but surely. I began to see myself not just as a mother who had been betrayed, but as a woman who had survived. I had endured heartbreak, deception, loss. But I had also built something beautiful from that pain. I had turned grief into strength, fear into action, love into something that endured even after the lie was exposed. There were still bad days. Days when I would see a picture from the past and feel the sharp sting of what had been taken from me. Days when the loneliness was so loud I could barely think. But there were also good days. Days when I laughed with the children or made a perfect cup of tea, or finished a lesson that left my students excited and engaged. Over time the balance shifted. The good days outnumbered the bad. The silence no longer scared me. The future no longer felt like a question mark but a path. Uncertain, yes, but also full of possibility. I did not know what would happen years from now. Whether the children would always stay close, whether they would grow up and ask even harder questions, whether Daniel and I would ever fully understand each other again. But I knew this. I had done my part. I had given love freely. I had stayed when it was hard. I had walked away when it was necessary. I had told the truth, even when it hurt. And in the process, I had found myself again. Not just the mother, not just the wife, but the woman who had survived it all, and still chose love, even when it was complicated. It has been almost 3 years since everything fell apart, and in so many ways I am not the same woman I was. I no longer define myself solely by the roles I once held. I am not just someone's partner, not just a mother in the traditional sense, not just the person who sacrificed and held things together. I am a woman who lived through something devastating and chose to come out of it with grace and purpose. Emotionally, I feel stronger now, though the scars remain. There are still echoes of that deep heartbreak, but they no longer control me. I no longer lie awake wondering what I could have done differently, or whether I had failed in some invisible way. I know now that I did my best with what I had, and that love is never a waste, even when it is not returned in the way we expect. Mentally, I feel clearer. The fog that hung over me for so long has lifted, slowly but surely, like the sun pushing through a stormy sky. I can think about the past without being pulled under by it. I can plan for the future without fearing what might be taken from me. I am learning to trust myself again, to believe in my instincts and to forgive myself for not seeing the truth sooner. Spiritually, I have grown in quiet, meaningful ways. I have stopped looking for answers in places that never gave them. I do not pretend to understand everything, but I have found a kind of peace in simply accepting what is. There is a certain beauty in surrendering to the unknown, in choosing to hope even after all that has happened. I have come to believe that sometimes, the most important growth happens in the most painful places. The children are older now. Mia is entering high school, full of opinions and questions and dreams. Jaden is starting to find his voice, opening up more about his feelings and exploring who he wants to be. Liam, still my little light, has a gentleness to him that reminds me how deeply children feel the world around them. We have found our own rhythm again. It is not the same as it once was, but it is ours. They know the truth. We talk about it openly when they want to. There are still wounds, still questions, but there is also love. And that love, I have come to realize, is what matters most. Not blood, not biology, not legal definitions or paperwork. What matters is who shows up, who holds your hand in the dark, who makes your lunch, helps with your homework, sits in the front row at your school play. That is what builds a family. I have learned many lessons. Some of them were painful, others quiet and simple. I have learned that people are not always what they seem, and that trust can be broken in the most unexpected ways. But I have also learned that healing is possible, even when it feels like your entire world has shattered. That you can love deeply and lose everything and still love again. That the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. I have learned that strength does not always look like power or control. Sometimes it looks like letting go. Sometimes it is in the tears you cry alone, or in the decision to get up and try again when it would be easier to give up. I have learned to stop seeking validation from people who never saw me clearly, and to start trusting the voice inside that knows my worth. There is a certain freedom in having walked through the fire and come out the other side. I no longer carry the same fears. I no longer try to fit into a version of life that does not feel true to me. I have created a space for myself that feels honest and whole. A space where I can be vulnerable and strong at the same time. A space where I can love without conditions, even when that love is not defined by biology or legal terms. What does it really mean to be a mother? That question has haunted me, challenged me, and shaped me. I used to think it meant giving birth or signing adoption papers, or having a title someone else recognized. But now I see it differently. To be a mother is to love without expecting anything in return. To give your heart, your time, your energy to someone who depends on you. To stand by them when they are confused, or angry, or scared. To hold space for their growth, even when it hurts. To teach them how to be kind, how to be strong, how to be themselves. Being a mother means choosing to stay, even when it is hard. It means forgiving not just others but yourself. It means listening, truly listening to what a child says, and also to what they do not say. It means showing up day after day when no one is watching, when there are no awards or thank yous, when the world tries to tell you that you are not enough. It is not about biology. It is not about perfection. It is about presence, about heart, about resilience. I may not have given birth to those children. I may not have a piece of paper that proves I am their mother, but I know who I have been in their lives. I know the nights I rocked them to sleep, the scraped knees I kissed, the math problems I helped them solve. I know the tears I dried, the stories I told, the songs I sang to comfort them when they were afraid. And they know it too. We are still a family, even if it does not look the way I once imagined. We are bound by something deeper than blood. We are bound by the life we live together, by the memories we share, by the love that has endured. I do not know what the future holds. There will be new challenges, new heartbreaks, new joys. But I am no longer afraid of what is to come. I have survived the unimaginable. I have rebuilt from nothing. And I know that whatever happens next, I have the strength to face it. I will continue to love these children in whatever ways they allow. I will continue to honor the woman I have become, not despite the pain, but because of it. I will live honestly, love fully, and never again let someone else define my worth. And if anyone ever asks me again what it means to be a mother, I will tell them this. It means showing up even when your heart is broken. It means giving without needing to possess. It means loving so deeply that your presence becomes part of someone else's foundation, whether or not the world chooses to recognize it. That is who I am. That is who I will always be.